How can a psychic medium give us insight into bridging the gap between the living deceased, the spiritual realm, and understanding spirit guides? Stay tuned for this episode of Spirit Lift. So during this episode, if you enjoy the content, please make sure to like the video down below, as that helps with our engagement, and as well subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll be informed each and every time we upload new episodes. Nicole, welcome to Spirit Lift.
Thanks for having me.
Nicole, thank you so much for being on this episode of Spirit Lift, and I am so incredibly curious about this topic and the work that you do as a psychic medium. I am just really passionate in understanding more and more deeply the spiritual realm and the many ways to understand it. And I don't think it's just naturally easy for me to do that day to day. I'm trying to, maybe I'm using my brain and trying to analyze things too much to understand why, what's really out there, what's beyond us, what really exists beyond this, way we experience in human form, with our five senses. What's bigger out there, right? For me, it's a constant issue of frustration, but also curiosity. So I'm just deeply motivated and excited to speak to you about your experience of understanding this, your sort of way of engaging with this, the spiritual realm. So as a psychic medium, and I think it's quite interesting. I think our viewers and our listeners would be really intrigued. So Nicole, tell us a little bit about what is it really, for people that really don't understand, what is a psychic medium, and how did you know that really you had these abilities to be a psychic medium?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that to answer your question, what a psychic medium is, it can be a number of different things. So the way that I'll explain it is kind of coming through my filter of how I experience it, which is a psychic medium being a person who acts as a literal medium, or almost like a human radio antenna between dimensions, between spirit that is non-visible, energy that has ceased to exist in the human form anymore, and there are many people who have the ability to connect into that frequency or that energy of spirit, or or energy that has passed through the human experience. So I guess our job as a medium is to literally bring that energy, bring that message through into the physical, the third dimensional form. So having said that, a medium can do this in many different ways. I mean, there's people that can see things from a healing perspective. There's some people that can just channel loved ones who have passed and so forth. So in terms of a psychic, there's many different types. In terms of a medium, it typically be someone who is passing messages from basically a different dimension, or a different frequency is easier to put that.
But why can someone like you have the ability to do that and maybe not me? Like that's where I like when I try to gauge my understanding of this, I'm like, what separates your ability to do that versus me not being able to do that, for example? What do you think that?
So I think it's just like, if there's some people, like, if you look at my body shape, I'm not meant to be a professional swimmer. You know what I mean? Whereas Michael Phelps, you look at him, long arms, big, tall, giant man, probably light as a feather, and he makes a phenomenal Olympic swimmer. For some strange reason, I was brought into the world with an extra sense. However, I think it's also my job as a medium to help people develop that sense too. Like, Michael Phelps can teach you how to swim. You might not be a professional Olympic swimmer, but you could definitely learn how to swim, right? I think it's the same thing for these gifts. I think I could teach you over a certain amount of time to flex that muscle and to get used to it, because I do believe it's an innate human ability. But would you be a professional psychic? Maybe not. It might just not be what you're here for. You might not be meant to be that kind of a messenger. However, I do believe, because of our physiology and the way that we're actually made, that it's possible for everybody. And to also go back to answer your question, how did I develop my own, or how did I discover my own? It was kind of a series of events. But early on, when I was a kid, I always knew things about people that that wasn't really able to be explained by even me. Like, I didn't know why. I just knew things about people, or I would know events that would happen before they would happen. I was always having dreams about them. For instance, in Halifax, there was a Swiss Air 111 crash, a famous airplane crash here. And I actually had a dream about an airplane crashing the night before. So certain things like that. No. Yeah. So just certain things like that gave me an indication that maybe I was a little bit intuitive. I never did anything with it until much later in life, where I actually had a near-death experience, which is super common for people with highly developed psychic abilities, people who have had an experience with death itself. And so in my near-death experience, I won't get into the whole thing, but after it happened, it was a very, very powerful moment, obviously, to see my own spirit leave my body and then come back into it. After that, it actually elevated this gift, and it was almost undeniable at that point. So energy started coming in more often.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to hit on that very specifically, because I've heard it in other instances with other people having
super common
elevated abilities after near. So that definitely did elevate your psychic abilities after
big time.
More in detail how and what that did.
Sure. So as opposed to just being like very, very intuitive and having insightful dreams, I started feeling people around me. I started hearing voices. I started just knowing that spirit was around me. And mind you, I was already super in tune with my spirituality coming up to this, like not to the level that I'm at after that experience, but I had an idea of what it was about. I've seen psychics before, and I was always really, really keen on learning more about my own intuition. However, after that, it was like I said, it was undeniable. Like, you and I could be sitting in a room and I could feel your guides come and talk to me, and I could feel a hand on my shoulder, or I could feel a physical presence more so. I could also start guessing what was in people's bags. It just became very I don't know, just became very fluid. I didn't have to try.
Did it ever
so there's something about me having experienced. It did at first. And there were times where I would kind of feel that. And I'd say, I'm not ready. But I started surrounding myself with psychics and kind of like embracing them and learning. So I went to talk to people that I knew, and I got advice. And so I had really good support around me to figure out how to work with it. I was never kind of like left out in the cold with it. So, but it can, even still now, it can be a little bit scary if I'm not ready for it. But
with everything that you've experienced, having this ability to understand this ability, I assume at a younger age in general, right? Like, you were quite young, and then the near-death experience. Like, have you, at the point where you are right now in this present day, do you feel like you've honed in the ability to embrace it in a way that makes you feel that everything you do to help yourself and help others is really utilized in the way that you want it to be with these abilities? Or does it sometimes still feel out of your control, so to speak?
That's a really good question, actually. So I enjoy it to a certain extent, but I also, have I embraced it fully? No, actually, I kind of, I don't always love it. I don't always love to do readings. I don't like utilizing it as much as I probably should. So I think, if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not the hero of psychics that's doing the greatest work. I think I still have a lot of work to do to integrate it into my life, because it is quite intense for me, especially because I do feel I feel things quite intensely. So being with people when they're in a crisis, or dealing with learning for the first time about things that they never thought were even possible, it was quite intense for me. So I think I'm still developing it. Like, I'm only 36. I think when I'm a little bit older, I'll probably be, more settled into it. And I don't do it full-time professionally, because I do find it still takes a lot of energy for me to do. However, my goal is to build myself up to be able to do that without having it take energy from me. Sure. If that makes sense.
So Nicole, what is an example, or maybe a couple examples that you've been in with certain people, maybe close friends or relatives, or just anyone in general around you, that like you felt that this ability really helped them or impact them in a way for them to have a certain type of clarity in their life, right? Whether it has to do with someone they lost, or something that was coming down the line that you recognized, or prevent them from, going into an accident or whatever. I don't know. Is there something that comes to your mind that clear?
Okay.
In that way?
Yeah, there's a few scenarios where I think that have been really, really impactful, where I realized that there is a huge benefit to doing this for people. I'll get to this later too, because I do think it's important also to talk about how I think it can be detrimental at certain points to access these kinds of things. But I think some of the things that were more positive were, like, when somebody comes in for a reading, sometimes they're not really expecting what's going to happen, especially if they've never done it before. And it might be one of the first and only times where somebody sits with them and sees them deeply. You can really, really feel into someone's soul when you're getting a reading from a good psychic. If someone is with you, they're present with you, they're reading your energy, which is something you can't really hide from. It's all of you. And then if you're talking about in terms of even channeling through spirit, it could be the first time that somebody realizes that death isn't real, that energy never really dies, and that perhaps that can also help heal with the grieving process. So I've seen people, write me messages afterwards and say, like, this brought me such a deep healing because, my XYZ, my parent passed away, or this person passed away, and to be able to reconnect with their energy and know without a shadow of a doubt that they actually still exist, that brings a lot of peace to people. But even more so than that, I do really feel like the most powerful moments are really just people coming in with personal issues or personal crises where they don't see clearly, and they usually have the answer. People usually know, whether it's an unhappy marriage, or whether it's a job that they want to leave. They know they want to move across country, but they call the psychic and they say, what do you see? And then suddenly I'm just like, okay, well, I see you moving here. And they're like, oh my God, like, that's the moment where people realize their own intuition is already there and it's already working for them. So for me, that's probably the most rewarding moment, when people are like, okay, I know.
Do you think, in your opinion, Nicole, that intuition is kind of, let's say, already an instilled energy as a natural pathway of our lives?
Yeah.
That if we're in tune or not in tune to it, we just create all the fear and self-doubt that maybe doesn't give us the right way to lead our life, or have the right reasons to lead the life we want, and we're like fighting against it all the time. Do you see it?
Yeah, 100%. I think that fear and living in the lower chakras, if you even want to get into that, living in the lower part of the body, materialism, that sort of thing actually does prevent, I think it blocks you from being able to access your intuition, which is why your intuition is most easily accessed right before you're about to go to sleep. Like, if you're not a psychic and you really want to tap in, those moments right before you're about to fall asleep, you're super psychic. You're super receptive, 100%. And that's where a psychic goes. If you want to go into a trance, that's something I do as well, usually in private, and then I'll record myself speaking, because things will just come out. But it's a good psychic can actually get themselves to the point where they're in that state in between sleep and awake. And that's when you're just in a complete flow state, and it just comes through your intuition. So sadly, we're not really taught about that as we're developing our senses, but it's just like being able to, touch, taste, or feel. That's a sense that we have. Our intuition is innately built in, and the world that we live in is not really made to help us develop that. In fact, quite the opposite.
Distract us from like natural sense of being and natural sense of just feeling of what we are. And that, let's go back to what you kind of just brought up a little bit before, saying that we should get back to this, like, how is it then sometimes, and in which ways a detriment to you and can be harmful to you if you're not especially something comes to mind, like whether if you're married or have a partner, or like just somebody close in your life that brings something, and then you're like, how do I deal with this? Like,
that's right.
How does that? So explain that. That would be interesting.
Yeah. So I often talk about this a lot with my clients, especially if it's a new person that's coming to do a reading. I usually have a bit of a questionnaire that I ask to make sure that, one, they're not in a state of crisis. And the reason for that is, and that's my biggest thing, is because if you're truly in a state of crisis or panic, even if you're not, sometimes when you come to see a reader, you are literally opening up your psyche to someone in a way that most people don't quite understand. When I access my intuition, my third eye, I access yours as well. I go into your energy field, and we have a bond and a connection that's really, really unique. So you then open yourself up to suggestion, almost like hypnosis. When you're in that state, almost anything, and you don't even realize it's happening, but anything I'm telling you can subliminally start programming your reality. So one thing that I tell people before reading all the time is I say that this is the energy in the moment. It can change at any moment if you wish, and you should manipulate that energy if it doesn't feel right to you. And if anything doesn't feel right anyways, set it aside. There's certain things that I won't talk about. I've had people come in and say, like, how my boyfriend was just put in jail for murder. Like, how do I get him out? I'm like, okay, that's just foolish. So certain circumstances like that, like, I just recommend not doing it. Also, if a loved one has just recently passed over and you're really heavily grieving, again, you're so open to suggestion that, even, and not all psychic mediums are the same either. So you should definitely do your research on who you're going to and find some information. I recommend talking to them for a little bit first and actually feel it out. Who are they as a person? What do they represent? Have some questions written down. That's something I ask people to do, is like, ask me a couple of questions. Let's talk for 20 minutes before a reading, and see if you're going to be interested in what I do, because we all do different things. So again, not to avoid the question, but coming back, like, it's not always a great idea. When you're in an elevated state, whether that's, heavy grieving, heavy elation, even in a manic state, heavy emotion and high elevated states are the easiest to program the subconscious in, right? So the nervous system and the subconscious mind are the most easily programmable in those states. So I will never read somebody when they're in a panic or in a high state of emotion. I try to get people to come down to a calm state and meet me there, and let them know that they should protect their psyche from my own suggestion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because I never really thought about it that way, because I'm sure a lot of people, when they would want to come to you, it's like in a state of like, I'm on the cliff and help me now before I jump, and that's not a good state for you or for them to be able to deal with anything. It's really, it's even worse for them. Like, I can handle that because it's something that kind of comes along with this. Like, sometimes people will call me at weird hours of the night and like, I need it now. I'm like, you know what? I personally won't do it. And it is something that is quite heavy for me too, to have to push people away and say, like, like you mentioned, potentially suicidal people, like that happens all the time. It's very much not my
it's not my job to take in everybody that needs that, because I used to have, it's happened to me before where people have showed up on my doorstep at my home and just waited for me to get home. And you have to build really, really strong walls and boundaries with people, but also I try to educate people when they do call me in that state. I'm not rejecting you. I'm not turning you away, but I need you to know that when you're in that state, it's not good to receive this kind of reading.
Absolutely not. I have a really kind of maybe hard to answer question. Well, it just came to my mind when we're discussing right now. From your purview and your life experience and having these abilities, what in your own way of seeing things is in a way, and not to sound too cliche about it, but what's kind of in your own way of interpreting things, the meaning of our human life, and if it should be incorporated with a sense of trying to achieve happiness? The reason I'm asking that is because from our discussion up till now, I understand that you see, or you understand that there are other ways of existence that are outside of this human experience we have. There's a spiritual realm. There are other ways of general existing, whatever that is interpreted to be, but there is existence outside of the human body. So, I think I see from everything that I've researched and come to understand in life, our mortality is a gift, actually, right? We being immortal would not be fun, I think having an end date, an expiration date, really, for me, the way I see it is like, we got to do the best with the time we got and make the most of it. And then when we're done, we're done. But so the reason I'm asking that is because there seems to be general existence outside of our human experience. So for what you know as Nicole, what have you come to understand the meaning of life to be? And is it tied to a sense of trying to achieve happiness, or is that just, a made up thing? Not
for me. I think that trying to achieve something that you already are is kind of impossible. And I'll double back to that in a second too, because for me, even death, the thought of death actually brings me a sense of relief now. Because the world's tough, but I have experienced that, like I said, that near-death experience, and having my consciousness removed from the physical body, it's liberation. It's freeing. It feels great.
But how? Like I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to hit on that because a lot of people are curious about this. Like, what exactly is going on in that state of being? And I like two people that I paid a lot of attention to regarding near-death experiences were like someone like Eben Alexander or Nita Morjani, who had really, really interesting, near-death experiences. But like for you, like what is? Let's go into more detail about that. What is that sense of liberation? What is going on? Do you feel like in a body still? Do you? What are you experiencing when that happened? Sorry.
Yeah. You're basically exactly who you are, but without the. It's very, very difficult to describe. It's a weightlessness. It's also, imagine being able to answer every question you've ever had immediately without having to think about it. It's almost like the filter of the mind is actually completely not there, and you just are, and everything just is, and you understand. Like, unfortunately, with, I think, the human mind, I don't think we can understand fully even the purpose of life. I don't think we can understand the universe, because the universe is, according to all the mystical texts, the universe is mental. The universe is a mind. So it's like, how do you understand a mind with a mind? Well, the purpose of life is actually, and according to old philosophical and alchemical texts, the purpose of life is to know yourself. And by knowing yourself, you know the universe. The Egyptians have a saying called all is a tomb. Everything is an atom. Everything is atomic. And if you think about it, you, me, my dog, and my slippers are all made of millions and billions of atoms. And the only thing that's differentiating me between the thing I'm sitting on right now is a frequency. It's the energy that moves throughout those things, right? So if you truly want to get down to it, you just have to look at the atomic level. What is an atom doing? What is frequency? What is energy? What is this visible vibrating thing that's creating matter, or what I perceive to be matter? So the whole point and purpose of this thing, I don't think it's to find happiness. I think it's to experience everything. Because I think if everything's a frequency, if you have a high, you have a low, right? But having that, if you talked about studying Eckhart Tolle, well, his whole thing is like the highs and lows are always going to be there. Your perception and your presence of those things are what can change. You can literally take yourself away from that because you're just the thing experiencing it, and you can look at it and experience it and not judge it. So you're always going to have pain, but by resisting that pain, you're creating more pain, if that makes any sense. Because if you think about electricity and frequency, what does resistance do? It shuts the system off,
Yeah, no, that's incredibly interesting. And I'll tell you from my own experience, personal experience, from it was a few years ago. I felt like I achieved in a very momentary experience of time, like a state of awareness and euphoria that it was the only time I experienced it, because I was doing a lot of, especially at that time, a lot of very deep, I would say, meditation and silence, moments and periods of just isolation, not like getting away from my wife or anything, but just I was doing a lot of just deep personal awareness type of practices that just put me in and I can't, and I'm sure you know this, but for me there was something of just overwhelming euphoria and bliss that came over me. It just blew me away. And it only happened that one time, but that one time when it happened really changed or really woke me up to what I think I am now, right? And so again, and it gave me a sense of understanding, like, you need to live life as much as you can without judgment and fear. And I think that kind of awareness gives you as well is that we always try to push and grind, and it's good to work hard and be disciplined and achieve goals, but I think from what I've come to experience as well, the receiving of life, the way you receive life, it's the inverse of what we've been taught. It's like we receive, like, because everything's literally a gift. If we think about it, sun comes up, sun goes down. We're in a gravitational, balance, but going around the sun. The tide, the waters from the seas just don't, go up. I mean, they do, but I mean, they don't just completely wipe out all the landmass. Everything works in harmony in some kind of strange way. And so we have been programmed for such a long time to not pay attention to the receiving of life. And I've found through many other small moments that the more we receive and are grateful and are accepting, we understand how beautiful this life is.
And think about even what you just said, in that we have lost the ability to receive life. Like, you are spot on, because the act of receiving is the feminine part of the energy equation. So if you even think about an electrical circuit, male, the plus sign, gives energy, the female receptor receives it. And so you're saying that we've been cut off from basically receiving our life force. And that's 100% true, because even when you look at, we talked earlier about the atom, all is atomic. The sun and the moon, well, proton, neutron, everything is plus negative, masculine, feminine, give and receive. So we think about that for a second. We live in this patriarchal society. That's now switching over to more, the feminine rising back up to becoming equal or having the same amount of power. So you think about the rise of spirituality, the rise of, you and I having this conversation probably wouldn't have happened 60 years ago. Like there is a raising of frequency and people learning how to receive, along with that rise of the feminine energy that's coming back into the world. That's what it is. It's literally that. So you're dead on where I think that we're learning how to receive a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's really true what you're saying, Nicole. And I think a lot of what happens throughout, the course of history, not necessarily the world history, because the world's been around for quite a long time, at least this more modern human history in the last few centuries, there seems to be different ways in which the energy of the earth and the way humans experience and shape the world around us through civilizations, has this, either more kind of masculine versus feminine. There's always, I see it as like a way in which there's always a way everything gets back to a balance somehow.
Always.
It seems like everything that's pulled in one direction somehow will get, boomerang back into its. And I'm curious, going into when you do your work and your psychic readings and consultations with people, as well as that, how important is it that, or how much does the theme of memory play into our human experiences? Meaning memory, let's say, because obviously there's certain civilizations, certain people in different parts of the world that believe in reincarnation, and we come back into this world many times and learn different things and come in different forms. But does memory, let's say, play a certain role in which we live our lives, whether it's an energy that existed before this human experience we're having now and it's carried on with us in this life? How much is, because Rupert Sheldrake speaks a lot about memory, this kind of universal memory. How much does that play into, if at all, what we're experiencing in our individual lives?
Yeah, I think what we perceive is memory is more so the way I see it. So if I'm thinking about the universe as if it's something that is this divine frequency, we come from a source that has, when you said you meditate, you go into this peace state where it's silent. I think we come from this dark silence, and that's kind of what I feel. And out of that dark silence comes this energy, this frequency that we talked about that moves through those atoms. And that frequency is almost like if you think about a guitar, the different harmonics of the same note. And as you move through time, you can see how there are a lot of philosophers that will say, there's nothing new under the sun, because it's almost just like the same frequency. It's the same themes that are playing out, but almost becoming more and more refined. You know what I mean? Our frequency seems to be raising, our consciousness seems to be raising. Is that not just a harmonic of the past? Us learning from the past and moving forward and carrying on this elevated frequency? I hope this makes sense, because sometimes I'll hear it, but then so yeah.
It is hard in a way for, especially people hear these kind of things for the first time to really grasp it. But I mean, if you've really, are interested in these topics in general and have studied a little bit and researched, then you'll understand what this all is. Because it's not a physical thing we're really talking about. We're talking about
and also if somebody's listening to this and they don't completely understand what I'm saying, your subconscious completely understands it. So it's not something where you have to kind of grasp it with your mind all the time. But what I mean by that is memory, of course it exists. However, I do think I think there was even a study where somebody was able to find out that all the great works of literature throughout life have all been essentially fractals of each other, meaning they all carry the exact same print. They all carry the exact same almost story. And I mean, look at movies. It's frequency. What is the theme of how it starts? It's creation, the middle, and then the end, the destruction. We always have that sine wave. We always have the same pattern that moves through everything. And I think when you truly understand an atom, and when you truly understand the frequency of a sine wave, you can literally understand absolutely everything in the third dimensional world, because everything that vibrates is an illusion. That's a whole different topic, because I do think we come from the silence. The source is complete stillness.
And I personally understand that, because I've experienced that, and I understand the beauty in silence, which sounds like really strange for people that need stimulated activity to get themselves going and feel happy and whatever. But there's actually there's actually a really good book by a Norwegian explorer. I can't remember anything in general in my brain, but especially his name, I will not remember it. But he wrote a really beautiful book that I read. It's a really short book, actually. I bought it in the London Tate when I was in London not too long ago. And he is a renowned world explorer. I can't remember his name, so just type in Norwegian explorer, book on silence, and then I'm sure it'll come up in Amazon or someplace. But anyways, he took a very long expedition to the Arctic, walked several days completely on his own, and that was the most silent, like he said, that you could ever experience anything. And he just became enlightened. He basically said he became enlightened, and I'm curious, Nicole, because I understand what you're saying with that. People that maybe that you've spoken with in certain occasions through your work and doing what you do, if at some point during those experiences, especially speaking with other people, and especially speaking, let's say, with deceased ones that have passed on from this human experience, have they described in their own interpretation or in their own way what life after death is? Have they explained that to you?
To a certain extent, they can explain it only how they understand it too. And I can only receive it as far as I'm ready to also understand it. However, sometimes what I'll do is, and where I get the most honest intuition is literally not from channeling other entities, because sometimes I'll get information from, everybody thinks that you're getting information from spirit, it's always going to be correct. Not the case. And in fact, a lot of times it's not, and that's tricky. But what we were talking about earlier, and you saying that like this explorer who went completely silent became enlightened through it, and you had that experience as well. Well, if we're talking about the three-dimensional reality that we're in being vibrational in nature, and that the closest to source you can get is silence, because that's the part that's not the illusion. You have to think about the body for a second, and there's 12 cranial sacral nerves in the brain, just like the 12 signs of the zodiac, and they actually do relate. When you shut them off, you shut down the vibration of the illusion, and you are source. So when you get to that point, when you actually practically get silent as often as possible, that's where you get your answers. It's not from a psychic, I'm going to ruin my own, my own business here, but that's the point. I don't want people to have to rely on psychics.
What the way for me personally that I see how you are valuable to each and every human is you are a very important, for lack of a better expression, guide for us coming to our own realization. Because
exactly.
Your expertise.
Yes. You
provide a very powerful type of way in which we can understand ourselves. And I think that's extremely valuable, to be honest.
I think so too. I think that's literally the best thing that I or any of us can do, is to reflect back the truth. And that's where I think sometimes people get lost in these psychic readings and things like that, is because people give their power away. Say, okay, give me the answers. I need you to tell me what to do. That's a lot of people want that. And that's the last thing I'm going to do for somebody. I'm going to help you get back into alignment so you can get quiet. That's what I want for you. Right. And that doesn't produce a lot of return clients, but that's not what I'm looking for. Like my purpose in life is what you said, is to help get people back to knowing themselves, because I think that's the point. I think that's the purpose. So if we can, and you doing this show, like if all of us can just be a mirror for that fact, that you have it all within you. And it's literally, I think some people have a really hard time wrapping their mind around, how can I have answers just by being quiet? What is meditation even going to do? Well, in the Western world, we don't study it like they know it in the Eastern world. They know the science. They know this kind of stuff. We don't. We just, okay, what do I do? Just sit here? and it'll work, even with you at understanding it. But like, there has to be at some point, brought into a deeper understanding of why that silence is it.
Why do you think, like, just being really, really, and let's say in a way properly immersed in nature and very natural settings can really help us do those that sense of achieving that incredible connection with source from within us? What is it about, like, nature? Like, for example, like when I go to the ocean and I'm out by myself right in front of the ocean without any cerveza or tequila yet. It's not nighttime, but like in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So, but when I go like right in front of the ocean and I'm just staring out, mesmerized by it, right? Or if we go into a forestry area and there's no one around, you're just surrounded by huge trees and hear the birds and whatnot. It always happens. What is it about that makes us just light up?
Yeah. What it is that you and I, if we're sitting in a room, because we're electromagnetic frequency, you and I are exchanging energy, and we might have a lot of mental clutter. So imagine a lot of people get anxiety about being around a lot of people, a lot of humans, but will go in nature and feel completely fine. The reason for that is because nature isn't thinking. Nature is literally just doing. And when you're in that frequency, you become that frequency. You literally are being tuned to the frequency, almost like you are, if I put two guitars in a room together and if I strum on one, the other will start vibrating. And that's the same thing with nature. If you're near the ocean and you're just watching, the waves go in and out as it does, it's not thinking about, okay, I'm an ocean, I need to figure this out. What's my purpose? No, with the ocean is just the ocean. And then you can get really, really present with that, because the ocean is literally there teaching you that you're also the ocean, because you're all atomic. You're all in this together. You're all in this frequency, experiencing this three-dimensional thing. So you're literally the forest, or so it's a teacher. And shaman will communicate the energy of like the ocean or trees. And you can talk to trees. Like, they literally speak. They have the energy of wisdom, because they literally hold water, which, if you look into the memory of water and the energy of water, it holds information, right? So these trees, whales, the ocean, they have information that you will pick up on, whether you realize it or not. And the best way to listen to that, you don't have to be a psychic. What pops into your head? It might be a slice of pizza, but that pizza might it might actually be a message. You know what I mean? Like, it's an interesting thing.
No, and what's also interesting with that, again, going back to frequency and sound and vibration, for example, is that, when a mother's pregnant with her baby, right? Like they sing to, some mothers sing to their child, or play, or put the headphones on top of the belly with the Beatles or whoever. And as that child grows up, there's a certain affinity towards certain types of sounds or likings to those things, or good memories because of that experience.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
100%.
So I think it's, you know, Nicole, with the way that you explain it like that, and when you're explaining with water and everything else, like, I know, like, I don't like to try to get too much into the minutia of, okay, what is God? What are we? When am I gonna shake God's hand someday?
Yeah.
Is it? What does God look like? You know, what is? You know, I don't like going there so much because it's just, I think it's impossible. You know, so I'm like, yeah, forget it. So, but what I think is the closest way to at least try, because I think we innately all have a desire for the curiosity of it. I think we're all generally curious on the why, the what, the where, all these things. I mean, that's part of what we are, right? We're generally born to be curious in that way.
Yeah.
Because we want to know, you know, what am I branched? What am I a leaf from that branch of from what tree, basically, right? So, but
yeah, we want to know ourselves. That's the instinct.
Yeah, we want
right?
to know exactly. So
that's we already know. We already know the purpose.
We
of
already
life.
know. Yeah, we just have to kind of wake up to it almost, right? But
why do you think we like watching reality TV? You know, why do we like social media? Why do we like looking at each other? We're looking at ourselves. We're studying ourselves. We're a bunch of atoms looking at a bunch of other atoms that are just doing some other stuff.
You know, and I hope for all of our viewers and listeners, and please comment below on what you think about what we're saying with this discussion, especially as it relates to, you know, how we really perceive ourselves and what we are. I really encourage our viewers and listeners to study more in depth what you talk about, the I can't pronounce it properly, the atom level. Well, how do you say that properly? Atatomic?
Yeah, just atatomic.
Atatomic, there we go. Yeah.
You can go back to the old Gnostic teachings. You can go anything that's pre Western religion. And I'm not knocking religion, because you can find the truth in there too. It's just hidden in allegory. Right. But I do that. I mean, the truth is in you. It's in everything. If you study, but go down to the atom. That's basically what I would say.
And find resources that go to that level of understanding. Yeah. You know what life is and everything. You know.
Yeah.
Nicole, just because this episode is going so quickly and it's so interesting, I really wish we could go on much longer. But I want to finish with one main type of question as well. You know, a lot of people, you know, I think a lot of people have a very, very difficult time coping with the loss of a loved one in their life, right? Like, it's obviously really, really difficult and it's very, I don't know, the way to deal with it is just not easy for a lot of people or some people. And it's just the state of grief can, for some people, feel like, oh, okay, you know, that person's gone. But for some people, it can last the rest of their life. So I'm not saying like your insight to console our viewers or listeners on, you know, oh, don't worry, they're fine. No, but like from what you know as Nicole, like what was this general, just good insight, I would say, into letting them know, hey, you know, this is what it is. Almost like this is just what it is. So they can understand, rather than, oh, don't worry, they're somewhere. No, like maybe they are, let's say, quote unquote, a spirit guide. Maybe they are in this different spiritual realm. Maybe that's true, but I'm just saying, in your own authentic and very honest way of knowing what you know, like what was just a good, honest answer for people to understand this?
To understand grieving, I think the most important thing to know is that, I mean, even myself as somebody that connects with those who have passed, I still grieve. I still feel that pain of loss, and that it's really, really important to not want to skip the steps of grieving. It's really, really important not want to avoid it.
What are the steps?
It's going to be different for everybody. Your process, what I mean is, don't skip your process of grieving. Don't try to necessarily think that even the psychic is going to bring you that, because even if you are able to connect with them, that still might not be it for you. And I feel like some people come with that expectation of, oh, my grief is going to be over. And grief is such a powerful thing, and it's held in the body in such a powerful way that I think the most important thing that people need to know is that the energy that comes in, be it grief or fear or anything like that, has to have a way out. You have to release grief and fear and things like that through whether it's however you release, whether it's a physical release or it's creative or however you do it, that has to be done, because you don't want to hold on to energy like that for long periods of time, because that creates that mental resistance that we talked about, that stops you from being able to get that quiet, that connection to source. So it's important that you feel. It's important that you receive the pain that comes in, because it's not avoidable, not even through seeing a psychic. So my advice is just more practical. It's to not run away from it. It's to allow it to take its time that it needs with you to process. There's no easy way out of it. Even, like I said, even with a psychic, once you've done that initial grieving stage, then perhaps it is time to come see somebody like me and maybe just have what you already know reflected, that you can still feel them, they're still there, and that, they're experiencing probably a different type of reality right now. And not everybody that has passed will come through. That's another thing to know, that I can't read everybody. I can't read every human. No psychic can. We can't always connect to a loved one, because that loved one may be in a completely different state, scenario, frequency, or they may not just be willing or able to communicate at some point. Because at the end of the day, spirit is just this intelligence. The intelligence, the consciousness has left the body. So whatever that consciousness is, I don't completely understand it either. With my mind anyway, I can feel it. I know what it feels like, but I can't explain it to you. Yeah, I think it's more important on the human level to just feel what you have to feel.
I think that is absolutely important what you're saying, because I think what we really have to understand, and I hope all of our viewers and listeners, however you understand it for yourself, and let us know and comment. Feedback is great, because we're all in this together. Is our individual life is unique, right? It is so unique. I mean, like you said, who in the heck knows if we will ever see the people we've ever cared about or come to know in our life ever again. Maybe in the way that we know it as we do now, right? Maybe it'll just never happen again. We love, we lost, we hurt, we grieve, we tear down, we build up. We go through all this cycle of things for 80 years, 90 years, who knows, 50 years, I don't know, but less, who knows. But we're in a very unique experience. So we cannot, just hold on, and we have to embrace whatever the energy is and accept it for what it is, and then grow from it somehow.
And that's freedom. If you can accept everything for what it is at any moment, you're free. To me, that is the epitome of freedom. And I think that even if you want to, change the energy of the perceiving of, okay, well, I may never see that person again, or this person has left my life, or, I've lost touch with so-and-so. What are the odds that you even met them in the first place?
That's right.
Like, it's impossible. It's almost, it's unknowable. So when you put it in that perspective, you're like, okay. And I don't know what miracles can happen next. I don't know the next person that's going to come into my life. So it leaves you more open to receiving, like you're talking about before, receiving the miracles, receiving the source energy, and receiving people that are there in your life to take you along your path.
And just think of it as well, like with everything you just said, Nicole, and also thinking of it from the actual inception of, the process of birth, like how many, for lack of a better expression, the male swimming teams or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know what that. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at this, but
It's all good.
the millions
Yeah.
of the chance. Okay, let me put it differently. I'm really bad. Sorry. The chance of you being conceived is minuscule, right?
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
is like a I don't know the correct percentage, but it is like a tiny percentage of a percent of a like nothingness that we are actually having this experience right now, right? Scientifically, we're talking about
100%.
science, right?
Mhm.
So we have to open our hearts of this energy of appreciation and love and just embrace it while we're on this ride, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the happenstance of life is just gonna be, but how you perceive it is gonna be completely different. And even I'm just even thinking about having this conversation with you. You're in Mexico City. What are the odds of me sitting, in my bedroom talking to somebody I've never met from Mexico City about these topics that I'm very passionate about, and clearly you are as well.
Yeah.
So it's you and I being in tune with our heart frequency, being able to connect with our true north, and you're magnetized to certain people in your life that show up at certain times for certain reasons, and it's unknowable. It just happens.
I thought it was just an algorithm that put us
Yeah.
together, right? The algorithms know better, who to
Yeah.
match people with. No, it is truly unique, and it's really special. And, just to conclude this episode, Nicole, where can, I'm sure, we're filming this particular episode and
Yeah.
sharing it to people in 2021, and so I think there are hopefully some capacity in which you can help people from anywhere around the world with what you do. If that is
Yep.
so, where can more people find out more about you, connect with you, follow you, get in contact with you if they want to do a conversation with you?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot on the internet, advertise a lot. I tend to allow the people that come and do the readings with me to spread the energy, because my known clients are the ones that I like to read, and that's usually how it works. But if you want to find me on the internet, you can find me on Instagram. It's at Mystic with a K, Nick, N-I-C, and you can talk to me through there and book me through there. Also, I think if you Google my name, my readings you'll pop up there. I don't have a website yet, but I'm going to work on that.
Get that Halifax crew to work with you.
Yeah,
Really
I know.
good.
I know. They're so good at it. They're so professional.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, it was such a pleasure to speak with you on these really, really insightful, just truly inspiring, and just absolutely how I see it, important topics. So I thank you so much, and thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole, and we will see you all Spirit Lifters on our next episode. Take care, and everyone have a great day.